quick intro and we'll get right to our subject material. Okay, so what I'd like to start with here is what Quizify is really all about and the problem that we solve. And we go after the issue of poor health literacy. And in essence, there's three categories here. The first part is that employees in general don't really understand or appreciate their benefits. And that's going to be most of what we talk about today. But in addition to that, we all know that employees will pay too much for healthcare. You've probably seen some of our solutions that help both your plan and employees save money when they're in the healthcare marketplace. And then in general, the last part on the right there, employees in general get sucked into our healthcare system, the machinery of it, and they can end up with unnecessary and potentially harmful care. This is really a significant issue in privately insured plans. So that's what we're all about. And how we go about this is that we have, first part, an engaging quiz format. And most of you know Al Lewis. Al had actually put together a trivia game. He was on Jeopardy. He hosted a trivia game show in the Boston area. So he brings a lot of creativity, gamification, and humor to our process on the quiz side. We also have doctors at Harvard Medical School that are reviewing our content so that when employees see this, they can get comfortable that it's valid. And then we also now have a point of service application. You can actually go to the App Store, Quizify to go, and download it. And that has our prevent consent. Now there's 800 numbers and other access pieces that come in with full subscription, but the language for the prevent consent there, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few moments. And then the other part of our point of service is to empower patients when they're in front of the doctor to remember to ask the right questions. We've all walked out of a doctor's office and said, oh, geez, I should have asked that question. And our point of service application that you can calendar so that reminds you right when you're there to ask the right questions and get the most out of your doctor visits. Now, our engaging quiz format has several different components. We really try to feed this information to employees in digestible increments. It's once a month, 10 questions. It takes 10 minutes. 92% of the people that start one of our quizzes will hold their engagement and they'll complete the quiz. We deliver information that can create immediate savings. We've got this Harvard doctor review, and on the right side of the page, where one of our specialties is writing custom benefit questions. I'd say a good, quarter to a fifth of our questions, and we have 1,800 questions right now, are benefits related. Many of them have been written after our employers that we work with have requested us to just help them to engage their employees more in their benefits. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Al Lewis, who's going to walk you through some examples so you can actually see what we put into practice. Al, you're muted.
All right, so you're on sharing, and I'm going to share. So, sharing the screen. Everybody should be able to see it at this point.
Yeah,
Mark, you're probably okay.
Yeah, looks good.
First thing you should know about benefits is that you're teaching them all in open enrollment, which for most people, not everybody, is next month. But here's a news flash: only 1/12 of all medical problems take place during the month of open enrollment. And you can check my math on that, which means that 11/12 of your employees probably aren't paying attention because it's not that relevant to them. That's why you have to do this stuff all year round, which is exactly what we're talking about here. So let's start out with the EOB. First of all, most employees don't even know what an EOB is, especially if you're the younger ones who, are just getting off their parents' health plans or whatnot. And we have all sorts of questions about what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? With sample EOBs, yada, yada, yada. Let us just go to an EOB question. And Mark, if this doesn't pop right up, just feel free to jump right in. It should pop up, but it's not. So Mark, I will unshare for a second. And I've been having a little Verizon issue here. Hopefully there's nobody from Verizon on the
Here we
call.
go. Am I sharing now?
No.
There we go.
All
The
right.
question.
So the question, we usually start out with when we get into these topics like EOBs, EAPs, et cetera, we usually start out with a very simple, engaging, you can actually expand the screen if you want, fun question. In this case, we talk about what does it stand for? And we have the choices: executive office building, where the government decides how much of your bill you should cover. And the executive office building is actually next door to the White House, but here's a news flash. There's nobody sitting here going through your insurance bills. And yet about 7 or 8% of employees who take this quiz will pick that answer. Eye of the beholder, meaning that you're the one who decides, and the doctor swallows the rest. That usually gets about a 0. Explanation of benefits, ding, 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 the right answer. This tells you how much of what you just spent must be paid by you. And also it should tell you how much you have left in your in-network and out-of-network deductibles. And then finally, the other wrong answer is Emergency Outreach Bureau, where you have to go to make sure your emergency room is covered. That's our most popular wrong answer. It's about 30%. So this is actually supposed to be a gimme question, and yet the employee health literacy is such that even on the gimme questions, only about 2/3 of people are getting them right. Mark, if you want to just thank you, and I will go back to sharing. And all right, so this brings us to our first polling question, which is, okay, so now we switch from EOP, if we get the whole initial thing going here, from the EOBs to the EAPs. The question is, do your employees understand and use their EAP? Yes, kinda, not really, not sure. And as usual, we've got a bunch of questions. I'll run a bunch. We have a couple already queued up in the Q&A. So Mark, why don't you, in the immortal words of the great philosopher Pat Benatar, hit me with your best shot on what's come up so far.
Okay, how do you keep employees' attention with benefits education?
All right, well, I would be lying if I said it was easy. Typically, accepted open enrollment month, when we're doing a whole thing on benefits, typically we sprinkle the benefits questions into the much more engaging questions about, nutrition and scans and, all sorts of stuff that people actually really, really like, which is why our quiz completion rate is so high. So the way I describe it's a little bit like E.T. and the stuffed animals there, where, you don't even notice you're getting these benefits questions. And we also try to make the questions themselves engaging, as you will see, as you just saw, and as you'll see momentarily. And how do we do on the quiz? Okay, so yeah, actually, that's not bad. So they kind of not really understand. That's actually pretty good. That's actually, I think, better than I expected. So as you just learned, the best we got was kinda. And I have to say, employees, including our own, do not understand all the services that are out there. So we have somebody in our organization who needed some legal help buying a house and didn't know where to turn, was looking all over the place. And it's like, wait a sec, don't we have a question about that in Quizify? So he asked his wife, who's works for a large organization with an EAP, and sure enough, they offered, I don't know, it's like an hour or two of legal care. That's all they need, legal, and then a discount on the rest. And that's all he needed, just to make sure that the other side in this transaction knew that there was a lawyer back there. Now, remember, the thing about EAPs is that they're getting paid PEPM. So it's a fixed yearly price. So essentially, every time you get a use, it's a cost. And you do not really want to be in a business where every time somebody uses your business, your profit goes down. You'd love to be in the opposite type of business. So they typically try to keep a very low profile. They don't raise tout their features to attract more usage. That's why it's so important for you to do that, my friends. So we have a whole 10-question EAP quiz, and it starts with, our usual sort of thing that we use to engage people, which is something pretty funny. What does EAP stand for? The Elvis Aaron Presley diet. And then you've got your peanut butter and banana and bacon sandwiches right there. I think there's some banana underneath that as well. Then you have the right answer, and then of course you have the Edgar Allan Poe diet consisting of raven, but just one serving, never more. So once we get into it, once we've kind of got their attention, they realize that this is going to be kind of fun by the standards of these things, and they might learn something. They keep going on the quiz. Remember, Mark said 92% complete. It's actually, Mark, I think it actually has ticked up a bit since we compiled the 92%. So we follow that one with 9 custom questions to create a 10-question quiz. So for instance, many people don't even know what these things cover. They most basically, they cover mental health. I don't know how many of you know the history of these things. They started, it used to be called, I think, alcohol prevention. It used to be just for, it's for substance abuse, for alcohol, and then it gradually expanded, and it used to be internal, and they became external, and then they started covering all of mental health, typically on the phone, and zero copay. But you know all this stuff. So we teach the employees this. We also teach them that it's completely confidential, and that's not something they necessarily would assume. For instance, most employees think, correctly, I might add, that employers have access, if they want it, to employee emails sent on the company server. So if an employer can see your emails, they don't automatically assume that they can't see this. So confidential is a huge thing. We talked about the other features, mentioned the example of legal. We teach people, you got your, sometimes there's some help with elder care and financial. Usually there's like an hour of financial planning or something like that. So we teach them all that stuff. And then the important thing is the contact information. Now you might say, well, what's so interesting about that? I will tell you what's so interesting about that. Just simply go to your own EAP and see what happens when you click through. And I will guarantee, I won't guarantee it, but half of you will find that when you click through, you either get something very generic. You can't really, it doesn't click exactly to where you want. And this is by design. So when we write these questions, the very first thing we do before we even start customizing these questions is we click through ourselves to make sure that in fact the thing actually works, which a shocking percentage of the time it doesn't. So now it's time for our second polling question, and I can see some more Q&A coming in here. So the question is, so we've done the EAP. We're going to sort of scan the horizon here. So we've done the 2 with the initials, and now let's get into some of the apps and some of the other things that are in your benefits. Do your employees experiencing back pain? A, know that most back pain heals with time and how to arrange physical therapy first. B, use an MSK app that you have. C, call their doctor. Or D, they don't know what to do and possibly get sucked into an orthopedist visit or a scan. And Mark, what do we have? Actually, I think we have a bunch have come in. One is, what is the data on the EAP? If they won't tell you, it's because it's absurdly low. I will tell you that. And we've never had any issue, or our clients never had an issue being told. What their issue is how low it is. So, we're looking at it's going up, it went up during the pandemic to maybe, I don't know, about 4%, maybe 5%. Used to be about 2%. If you unleash us on EAPs, we'll get it to 6 or 7 or 8%. But I mean, first of all, probably 80% of employees don't need it. So getting 6 or 7 or 8% to actually use it is pretty good. Mark, what do we have? And
Yeah, you know, anecdotally, at one of the World Health Congresses, a person from Nationwide, they've had an EAP program and they actually get like 20-25% usage, but that's because the CEO is like all over it, and he's admitted that he's dealt with some mental health issues, and he really encourages everybody to use the EAPs, which are designed to help people in crisis. And they've created a culture, but it's been over like the last 10-15 years.
that would be the rare exception.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're going from, if you're at like 6 or 7%, you're doing very well. If they're not telling you it's too low. Mark, I accidentally clicked off on the poll.
Oh,
what do you
okay,
have
yeah.
there?
Well, it says that 30% said know that most back pain heals with time, and how to get the physical therapy, which is great. Then another 30% said go to the doctor or ER, and another 30% said don't know what to do.
Okay, so yeah.
But no one clicked on the apps on the second part, which is interesting.
All right, which is interesting, because actually, those of you who know me know that I'm sort of an apophobe. I'm not humongously partial to these things in general, but in fact, the MSK ones do have some benefit. The Kaya one actually has an honest to goodness RCT associated with it, not just, oh, we compared participants to non-participants and the participants did better. No. It's an actual RCT. And these things do actually do something in the case of MSK, particularly the Kaya one seems to be quite well proven. But yeah, I mean, what typically happens, and Mark, why don't you tell your story, because you're kind of a D, or not, you would have been a D person had it not been for Quizify.
Oh yeah, I mean, I live in an area where the hospital systems have bought up a lot of the doctor practices. So if you go in complaining of mild back pain, right away you're going for a scan. And I did get referred to an orthopedic surgeon who wanted to do a spinal fusion right away. And that was, 15 odd years ago. I actually ran 2 marathons after that. But unfortunately, it is very possible to sort of get sucked into the machinery of our system. And you see an orthopedic surgeon, he's not necessarily educated on physical therapy. He's trained to do surgery. So that's just something that's part of the machinery of our healthcare system that I think people need to be aware of and just ask all the right questions.
Yeah, and newsflash, and we have this in Quizify too. If you get an MRI of your lower back, it will show a problem, period. I know, because like Mark, I got one, well, he said 15 years ago, I got one like 20 years ago. And if the MRI was right, I'd be in a wheelchair by now. Now, back pain, as you notice from the previous question and the answers to the previous question, is very common and very overtreated. Spinal fusions are, as one of our clients said after we showed him some of this stuff, it feels like it's this generation's lobotomies, which it kind of is. I mean, the success rate is quite low. I mean, you fuse one vertebrae, the others, it puts pressure on the other vertebrae. And one of our classic trivia questions is that what's the #1 reason for a spinal fusion? And the answer is it's a failed spinal fusion. Now, orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons are trained to do, oops, I'm sorry, they're trained to do surgery. They're not trained to sort of not do surgery. And here's the worst part. This may seem like the best part, but fusions are now done outpatient, which is great when you actually get the fusion, but it also means it's very easy to agree to. It's like, oh yeah, just come in and, we'll have you in and out in a day, and everything will be hunky dory. So in addition to teaching people this stuff that you need to teach them about your well, actually, it turns out a lot of folks don't even have a MSK app, but teach them about the back surgery, what's covered, what's not. And comment has come in about the fact that PT needs a referral. But here's the thing. You might not, you probably don't even need PT, because if you go to Quizify to Go, which is our point of service app that is the complement, sort of the right shoe to Quizify's left shoe. It's what you take to the doctor. And you're going to the doctor for back pain, and you enter the word back into the keywords, you get a bunch of hits. And this is for this is for low back pain. And it says, make sure to try a few things before being referred to an expensive specialist. Now, here's the key thing that we come back to time and time again. 80% of back pain will go away on its own, but 80% of people with back pain are quite convinced that they are in the other 20%. And the answer in back pain tends to be just let it go. I mean, I had back pain. It took like 2 years to go away, largely because I was doing the wrong. Don't do sit-ups, folks. They kept telling me to do sit-ups. That just makes the back pain worse. I mean, who knew? It's planks are in, sit-ups are out. And then this is a whole set of questions that you can ask the doctor, and they're not confrontational questions. You know, they're conversational questions, and you want to make sure you get your questions answered, because how many of us, I should have made this a polling question, how many of us have gone to the doctor and then on the way out remembered we forgot to ask a bunch of questions? It happens all the time. Or sometimes you get home and your spouse or partner will say, do you ask about such and such? And you say, oh, I forgot. You know, we say there's something called white coat hypertension or white coat syndrome. When you go to the doctor for blood pressure, or when you go to the doctor, your blood pressure goes up. There's also kind of a white coat syndrome that when you go to the doctor, somehow our IQs, our collective IQs seem to go down, you know, the white coats and the diplomas and the gown and all that stuff. You just kind of don't, you're not in your element. So we have a whole bunch of questions that ask that kind of nudge people toward, do issues like mine often go away? And they're kind of nudge people toward doing nothing. And then we have questions that have links to authoritative sources. So if you want a more objective answer than the doctor might give you, you might click through to these things. And like, will Advil speed healing or just relieve pain? It turns out Advil actually probably retards the healing process, as does ice, by the way. And you can put these questions right in your calendar. That's the last item here, to have with you. I mean, they're on your phone as well when you go to the doctor, and not just back pain. We've got this for 166 categories. And sometimes we have a quiz to learn more. So like we have a whole back pain quiz that goes with this. Now, I think it's probably been about 2 years since we've done a webinar that did not mention silver diamine fluoride for cavities. So at this point, everyone on all of our webinars knows that you don't have to get cavities filled for the most part anymore. A lot of you know that I actually have silver diamine fluoride in my own mouth, and in fact, it works exactly like they say it works. We make sure your employees learn about it and use it, and it's the only dental treatment to receive breakthrough therapy from the FDA. Now, for kids, they're required by their trade association to discuss SDF with the parents, but when was the last time they did, right? And it costs nothing, and you know the rest. It's painless, it's non-invasive, quick, inexpensive, yada, yada, yada. But here's the question, because this is about benefits. Before we get to the question, Quizify has a full quiz specifically on this. It's not enough just to ask, just to mention it like we do on our webinars or on our homepage quiz, to mention it once. We have specific questions like, how long does it take? 2 minutes. Why do you have to ask for it instead of being offered? Because it doesn't hardly cost anything. For how many years has it been in use? Around the world, about 52 years. In the US, I think we're in year 9 since FDA approval. And what objections will your dentist raise? They're going to tell you your tooth is going to turn black. Your tooth isn't going to turn black. I could open my mouth right now. You would see a black spot on a molar, but you would not see a black tooth. So the question, I thought we had, we don't have a question on this one. Let's now turn to urgent care and ER benefits. And the issue here is always, I mean, there's been this rise in urgent care centers are everywhere now, and that somehow the number of ER visits has only declined a little bit. I'm not including the pandemic when everything went down, has only declined a little bit. even though the co-pays have gone way up, the co-insurance is high, the price is high, it's like the urgent care was additive. So there are really two things we work on here. Do your employees understand the difference between the two, ER and urgent care, and can they recognize a freestanding ER, or do they think it's urgent care? So one question we would ask is, got an urgent medical problem, which of these will cost you about 10 times? And this is a customizable question. So depending on what your benefit is, you can change that 10 times to whatever the difference is between the copay and coinsurance, likely coinsurance for an ER, freestanding or regular emergency room versus a urgent care center, which to the untrained eye look pretty similar. So the next question, and I do notice that the Q&A box is filling up here a bit. What is the most important thing to know when you go to an emergency room? There's a federal law that states that the ER must treat you even if you don't sign their financial consent. Signing the hospital's financial consent creates a legally binding contract that you can't really get out of. Using Quizify's prevent consent instead keeps most bills under 1,000 or all of the above. And while we get the pretty predictable answer there, Mark, what has come in about the previous stuff?
Well, this is actually more about the ER. There's a question here that says, how do you get employees to care about their ER bill if the employers are footing most of the ER costs?
All right, well, that's a good question. It has a couple answers. One is, and there's nothing you can do about it now for 2023, but one is in the benefits design. I mean, you can make them care, without a takeaway, you can make urgent care less and ER more. But the second thing is, if you do have a fixed copay for the ER, or if you feel like the employees aren't really caring much about their the ER bills, you can simply give people a wellness points bonus for using the prevent consent when they do go to the ER. So they have some kind of incentive to save you some money. And it's a little like airline points, the wellness points are, in that employees tend to overvalue them in many organizations. So that would be the short-term solution, is make them more like airline wellness points to use it. Yes, of course, we have just about everybody going with all of the above, but the other three are correct as well. Using the prevent consent will keep most bills under $1,000. And we say most, well, we'll get to the most part in a second, but this ER prevent consent, and I think most of you are familiar with it by now, eliminates surprise bills from the ER. You might say you thought they were already eliminated by the No Surprises Act. That only covers out-of-network bills, high network bills. It keeps kind of the ones that make the headlines, like the $11,000 COVID test, I think it was, which really happened. But the ER is very expensive in network for reasons that aren't worth going into here. And using this prevent consent will keep most of those bills well under $1,000. Remember, you don't have to sign what they tell you to sign. The ER is going to have to treat you anyway. And this will pop up on your screen. Our prevent consent will pop up on your screen when you get near an ER. And the reason we know this, I mean, we know it because we know it, but where I live, there is a bike path that for whatever reason goes right in front of the ER at the local hospital. And I have the phone, in my pannier, and I can hear the little ping going off, telling me that I'm within 100 feet of an ER. So then we teach you exactly what language to use, and we won't get into the exact language here. I think at this point, most of the people, even if I don't know you, you know me well enough that even if you're not a Quizify customer and don't have access to the 24/7 line that we have for support, or the rebilling line, or you don't even have the pop-up screen, you do have the consent somewhere and you know what to write in. And this is what you need to do to keep that bill down. Now, we used to, I mentioned it was geofence. We used to say that they were all under 1,000. We started getting some over 1,000. And that's because they had procedures by on-call physicians. So now we say that we will guarantee bills under 1,000, not involving procedures to stay under 1,000. Although paradoxically, the more you pay for that ER visit, the more you have saved, because you bring in a plastic surgeon to do stitches in your kid's face. It would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Now it'll cost you about $1,700. So let's turn now from ER to just going to see what. Okay, well, Mark, we'll get to where these things are piling up faster and I can get to them, but we'll have time at the end. This whole webinar, we're trying something new here, which is a 45-minute webinar and the theory that more people will stay to the end, even though, just for the record, a large number of people do stay to the end. So now we have this new thing that has just come up that we're going to do a webinar on, which is the colonoscopy findings, which for the purposes of this webinar, understanding the benefits, we wonder how many people understand what you offer for colonoscopies. So just by way of background, this just came out this month. It was a large longitudinal RCT. It covered a decade, more than a decade, tens and tens of thousands of people. And they had, some of them were offered offered colonoscopies and others weren't. And what they found was the group that was offered colonoscopies have a slight reduction in incidence of colon cancer, but essentially no reduction in the all-cause death rate. Now, it's not quite that easy, and we're going to get into it in 3 weeks. The critics actually have some good points. And this was the New England Journal of Medicine, so you'd think it would be a very solid study, but the critics have some good points on this that we'll be reviewing in our next webinar that we hope you sign up for. But for the purposes of this webinar, which is about employees understanding their benefits, the bottom line, so to speak, is that employees need to understand your current coverage of colonoscopy alternatives. So polling question time. Everybody get ready to hit their buzzers here. Do you cover follow-up colonoscopies at 100% for employees who start with Cologuard or the fecal immunochemical test? It's easy for me to say. Or the new blood test that, frankly, you probably don't even know about. I just found out about it a couple months ago when it came on the market. And the choices are yes at 80%, must be pre-certified, or don't know. And I can see that Q&A box sort of exploding here, Mark. What do we have?
Okay. How do you tell an employee not to get a colonoscopy if their sister had colon cancer?
How do you tell an employee not to get a colonoscopy? Well, the answer is very simple. You don't. Forget about what the study said. You don't. And we'll be covering that in 3 weeks. Just to cut to the chase on the colon thing, we have found this optimal solution between the critics and the study. And it's based on the fact that one size does not fit all. So some people should be getting colon scans starting even age 45 or even lower. Other people should not be getting colonoscopies, according to the study. But we have figured this out. This is what, okay, Mark, did I tell you this was going to happen? People don't know their own benefits. So if you don't know, and this is I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but this is 80% don't know. And frankly, I don't know if what my wife's coverage is either. But if we don't know, I guarantee you that that your employees don't know either. And so number one, I think where we come out on this is you need to cover it. And number two, you need to tell the employees that you cover it. And also you need to explain to them that this is not an easy, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go get my glucose screen kind of thing. I mean, these are tests that have some significant risk associated with them. I think these two are redundant enough that we don't have to do them. These are tests that have some significant risk associated with them. In fact, once again, not to steal our own thunder from our November 8th webinar, but in the younger population, the 45 to 55-year-olds, where the the powers that be, the people who make their money on these things, want you to go get a colon screen, your risk of a complication dramatically exceeds the risk that they can actually find a cancer that, number one, they wouldn't have found later because a lot of these things grow very slowly. And number two, can change the course of treatment. So you're actually more likely, not you, but many people are more likely to be harmed than benefited by getting a colonoscopy. And we'll have all this stuff for you in a couple of weeks, few weeks. So I think we probably have other questions on the colon, but let's.
Okay. Do you want me to take it from here, Al?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you go ahead for it here?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here and get back to the presentation here and get to the section where we are right now. We have two questions here that we wanted to go over, and these are relevant in the sense that these are, in many cases, these are newer benefits, second opinions, and you might be redesigning your formularies. And we're educating people on why they should get second opinions and why those drugs that they see on TV may not be as good as you think they are. And the commercials do a great job of convincing you how good they are. But here's a study that was done by the Mayo Clinic. And the question is, what % of initial diagnoses were truly complete and accurate? Is 75, 50, 25%, or 12? So we're going to launch our poll here. This is it. And this is a Quizify question that preps people so that they can understand, the value of a second opinion.
While you're doing that, Mark, an older question came up about the physical therapy and the fact that you actually, in many plans, you need to get a referral to get the physical therapy through their, and employees may or may not understand that. If you're thinking about next year, that might be a good benefit to sort of shortcut or make it so that just a doctor can call or something.
So we're sharing the results here, and as you can see, the correct answer we'll show you on the next page, and actually the Quizify question, where we had a third say 50, a third say 25, and a third say 12. And here is the actual Quizify question as an employee might see it. And it's a slider question. So you might come in and let's say they'll say 50%. Well, sorry, that's not quite right. Aim lower. Let's say they break it down to 25. Nope, sorry, aim lower. And then they bring it down to a lower number, 12%. And that's wow, that's exactly right. Now, that's a little bit scary, and we know that. So what we do is in our answer, we say not to worry. Most initial diagnoses are actually accurate because most medical issues are minor and clear, and a surprising number go away on their own. But if you do have, and this Mayo Clinic was really for more complex illnesses, and if you have a serious condition, need a powerful drug or a major procedure, a second opinion can really make a lot of sense. So it is a bit of a scary statistic, and it is a relevant study. But it is also very good information to make employees aware of, so that when you put that second opinion service out there, people will actually go and use it. Okay, now our last question here is about the drugs that everyone sees on TV, and it's about the nature of FDA approval and how it actually works. And the question is, if a new drug is approved by the FDA, you can be sure that A, approved drugs must work most of the time. B, the new drug will be more cost effective than other drugs in the market. C, it works better than older drugs for the majority of patients. Or D, none of the above. And this is our last polling question. So let me just put it up here. And another question came in here, Al, you might want to answer this. How do we know that a second opinion is correct?
Well, number one, we don't, but number two, at least it tells you that the first opinion may not be correct. So then you sort of interpolate between the docs until you find the right answer. Now, if you go to the Mayo Clinic, some large employers do have that benefit where you you can get transported to the Mayo Clinic for a second opinion for certain serious things. But here's what you should not do with a second opinion, which is get a second opinion from a doctor in the same practice, or even the doctor that your current doctor recommends. I mean, they have to be as separated as possible, because if one guy starts denying another guy's diagnoses, the other guy's going to start doing the reverse. So they tend to all sort of work in harmony with each other. So that's why you want to get outside the system.
Well, here's our answers here, and the correct answer is actually none of the above. And for those of you out there that have really taken a look at your pharmacy benefit plan and realize that in many cases, redesigning your pharmacy benefits can yield a much better program for your employees at a much lower cost. And in doing that, you need to educate your employees on the nature of FDA approval, because if like Humira is, I think, a good example in the sense that it doesn't work 49% of the time. But if you see the commercials on television, you're going to believe that that's a really good drug. So there's some education that sort of needs to be done in the background to help people to understand that if you suggest an alternative, which can be done at the doctor level, because that's where employees will feel comfortable, they'll be more open to it. So that's, and then, our Quizify question here on this, we have also, which I can quickly go to, but we have good answers to each one of these, in the sense that I'm not going to go through each one of these, but it'll help an employee to really understand a little bit more clearly. It's got the Harvard stamp on there, the nature of FDA approval for drugs. So we can help with benefits education if you're redesigning your formulary to help your employees understand the nature of FDA approval and prescription drugs. So that let me just go back to our presentation now. That wraps what we wanted to show you in terms of the questions that we have regarding improving employee health literacy, on understanding and appreciate their benefits. And we'd love to show you more about a full suite of employee health literacy services. And anyone that joins us in a demo will be happy to give you a quiz on any benefits topic of your choosing. That will be an open quiz that you can just share with your employees, and everybody can play it and learn something. So thank you all for joining us. Al, would you like to make any final comments, or should we leave it open for a few more questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, shockingly, just about everyone is staying on. So let's do one more question if there's a good one that's come in. Otherwise, we'll send you the answers to all the other questions.
Well, it gets back to the colonoscopy thing in terms of a friend had a perforation during one of these tests, and those accounted for in the study. You want to comment on that, Al?
Yeah, so a perforation is the most serious complication of a colonoscopy. Fortunately, they're rare, but they can be life-threatening. I also had a friend who ended up in the ICU because of a perforation. And the short answer is they were not accounted for in the study. The complication rate for colonoscopies ranges from about 0.13% to over 1%. Now, 0.13% might seem like a low rate of complication, but remember, in the younger population with no particular risk factors, that's higher than the likelihood that they're going to find a significant cancer and save your life. So be with us on November 8th, where we go into the colonoscopy thing in great detail.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Bye, everybody.